I'm different. I can't recover from MECFS or fibromyalgia because I have mould illness. I'm different. I can't recover from POTS because I have Lyme disease. Because I have mast cell activation syndrome. Because I have a genetic variation. Most of us have these type of thoughts, and many of us spend more money than we can afford on treatments without any real results. All of you in the ANS REWIRE program know that I advocate for physical treatments, working with healthcare professionals and doctors, and that I advocate physical treatments in combination with a brain training approach. But it is the context of how we do this that is so key for success. It is about support for your recovery, not to cure you. In this amazing interview with Alexandra, we explore her journey with countless doctors, and I ask about the evidence for the diagnoses she receives. I ask about the evidence for the effectiveness of the treatment approaches and the given reasons why they didn't work for her. She tells of the horrendous decisions that she and her husband made, her failures with treatments and her failures with other brain training approaches, and how she finally made her breakthrough with the ANS REWIRE program. We explore how she recovered from MECFS, POTS, chemical sensitivities, mould illness, and anxiety. I hope you're inspired and that you gain many insights for your recovery journey.
Worst, I was basically bedbound, let's say 20 to 22 hours a day, around 14-15 months where I was housebound. The fatigue was so crushing that sometimes I felt it to my bone. I could not describe it to doctors. I could not describe it if it's fatigue or it's pain. Like, I feel like the fatigue was so deep that it almost was like pain. One thing that really laid heavy on me, it's what one doctor said that was part of that outpatient facility program, and he said to me, you know that you'll never be the same again, right? And that was something that I carry with me for at least the next 2.5 years. It was hard to stick with anything where nothing seemed to shift in any way. So by July of 2020, I counted, it was 42 different type of medication and drops and tincture. This is not 42 pills. This is not 42 pills. This is just 42 different kinds.
Just a short but important message regarding the content of this podcast. The ideas, concepts, and opinions expressed in this recording, website, and associated media and products are intended to be used for educational and information purposes only. Nothing presented is intended to replace your physician, nor are they a substitute for medical diagnosis, advice, or treatment. This podcast is provided with the understanding that the authors, guests, speakers, and publishers are not rendering medical advice of any kind. Well, I'm really excited to speak to another CFS recoverer, somebody who recovered using the ANS REWIRE program. And today I'm speaking with Alexandra from Wisconsin. How are you doing, Alexandra?
Hi, Dan. Very well, thank you.
It's lovely to connect with you today and to hear your story of your amazing recovery journey. Now, I see you're from Wisconsin in the US, but that accent suggests to me that perhaps you're from somewhere else originally.
Yes, I am originally from Romania, so Eastern European accent. I moved here 14 years ago.
14 years ago. Okay, I bet that was a big adjustment.
Yes. So whatever accent it is, it's here to stay.
Yeah, I'm in the same camp. Don't worry. Look, how old were you, and how long ago was it when you first started to become unwell?
it was 4 years ago. So I was 35 and a half years old at the time. So more exact, December 2017 is when was the onset of my symptoms. It's hard to forget because it started with a visit at the emergency room.
Wow. Okay, that sounds dramatic. So what happened?
So the initial symptoms that I had, it was shortness of breath. That was just there for a few days, so it became quite hard to breathe. So I went to emergency room. It was nothing else serious, so they just put it on anxiety. And then went back to my family doctor, and they did some other type of tests, or some pulmonary capacity test, and everything came normal. And that's where the journey with my illness began.
Had you experienced anxiety before?
Yes, I did. Nothing that sent me to the hospital, nothing that needed medication. Here and there, a little bit, the last maybe 5-6 years. I did felt it sometimes. I was working in retail, so sometimes towards the holiday season and the crowds, or being a little bit claustrophobic here and there. So at this point, I didn't thought that it's more than that. It was December. It was, the holiday stress. So we thought that it's nothing more than that. It was just a little bit more severe than all the other times.
And what happened next?
So the following month, February, I start having some lightheadedness. That it just didn't go away. So this became the second symptom. And from here, in a matter of weeks, it was full-blown brain fog. That was just so severe that it's not ideal to go to the doctor with these symptoms, because they don't really understand it. It became very hard even to drive and turn my head to look for traffic. Any sudden movement of my head, it was difficult. I always felt the need to rest my head. Even when I was eating, I was basically in bed and just kind of resting my head, like sitting in bed. So this was the next symptom that I went to the doctor with, and I complained so much about it that they even sent me for an MRI for my brain, and it became normal. So with every new test that they did and came normal, I feel more than they thought that this is just psychosomatic, basically.
And the breathing issues, did they persist as well?
No, interesting enough, that somehow dissolved. So now it was all this severe brain fog and kind of like a total mental exhaustion. It became very challenging to stay in conversation, to maintain eye contact, because that required like some focus. So it started affecting my job a lot. I got very scared of what was happening. I felt like I lost my appetite. I started having problems sleeping. So they started accumulate one after another.
And what were you thinking? What was going on, and what was your doctor saying?
I was lost. I didn't know what's going on. Before I had the MRI, I was hoping that I was actually going for an MRI, hoping that they find something. I was so desperate that I was hoping they find something, even if they take me straight to surgery, or it's something like in my brain or something. And I did not know. I was just constantly going and just tell them what's going on, hoping that they give me an answer. And they did not have an answer, but they were wanted to put me on anti-anxiety and antidepressant medication. It became almost pressure from the doctors and from even family in some ways, that you have to be on some sort of the medication. That was the initial treatment that everybody had for me. They just put me in a depression. They told me I'm depressed. I didn't tell them I'm depressed. They put me in that category.
Kind of sounds depressing.
It became very depressing when your life is taken away from you. And it was a whole loop of not having answer, but needing the doctors because I couldn't work. My performance was affected, so I had to take some breaks from work. So all these needed papers signed from the doctor, and it became a constant loop that seeing doctors all the time, trying to work, go back for them to sign papers in some way. Or I tried that for like 2-3 months. It's called here in the US, it's called an intermittent type of a leave. So just go for as much as you can and then go home and come back. And after that, by the beginning of summer, June 2018, I had to get into a short-term disability from work. At that time, it was not even 6 months in, so they were still rolling with a depression diagnosis at the time.
Right. And did you, I mean, it must be pretty anxiety provoking, right? You probably felt a lot of mental anxiety and maybe even depression, I imagine.
Absolutely, because yes, absolutely. At that time, I did not get any validation for what I was feeling. I did not know about CFS. I was not in any help group, so I didn't know anybody that was feeling what I was feeling. It was hard to explain to people what this is going on. People just assume that something major happened in my life, like some sort of a trauma, knowing how I was before. So nothing of that mattered. And yes, it became very lonely journey in a house full of people, basically. And that's when I was I even did an outpatient program. Basically, I was going with anybody that would listen in any way. So for a while, if they were telling me that this is what it was, I was in such a vulnerable place that whoever was listening or trying to find a potential solution for me, I was going with it. So I even did an outpatient program for depression for like 5-6 weeks, sorry. And it didn't really apply to me because it was nothing to fix in my life around it. You know, most people were there because of a particular situation that happened in their life, as a relationship or grief. And I could not relate with that. So it was still a lot of question marks even after that episode.
Yeah, no, I understand. So, I mean, what were you thinking? Were you thinking this is depression? Were you thinking this is anxiety? Or what's causing your illness?
Yes. So at this point, my brain fog was the main symptom. So it was like an extreme mental fatigue per se, but it didn't really was not in the whole body quite yet. And I became so vulnerable, and I just kind of let others decide for me for a while. So
we just become a passenger, don't we?
Yeah, and just different medication after different medication. I mean, the list of medication that I've been and different combination of medication, it's absolutely absurd. I mean, I was the type of patient that it was still coming back. I don't know. I was just so desperate for answers.
So were these medications psychotropic drugs, like antidepressants and anti-anxiety?
Antidepressant. Yes, right. Mostly antidepressant.
Okay.
This didn't work. We tried the next one. And each one of them with their own side effect. that it just made matter worse for me at that time.
So then how do your symptoms then progress? Did you start to get additional symptoms?
Absolutely, yeah.
Worsen?
So by the fall of 2018, so it's like 9-10 months, I felt like it was like a domino effect. So all this exhaustion, fatigue that I had in my head, it basically became in all my body, my whole body. Right. So my mornings start to become very, very hard. I become very isolated. So yeah, like 10 months into it. But I was still in that approach with the doctors. The next thing that I tried was they call it transcranial magnetic stimulation for depression. So it's like a treatment with a device. They try to activate it. It feels like a woodpecker for 18 minutes and 30 seconds a day, and for 36 days. And that was the next thing. It didn't help in any way or shape or form.
Did any of these treatments at least help you with how you were feeling or coping with the illness?
No, and some of them actually even made me have some very dark thoughts that it was totally not me. I mean, I didn't act on any of them, but I could feel that it's the side effects of the medication. And
it seems strange that some antidepressant medications can have suicidal ideation as a side effect, because you'd think that's the very thing that it would be seeking to prevent. So it seems like a very bizarre sort of a side effect. So what happens next? I mean, now you're approaching a year being ill, and looks like you've had woodpeckers at your head, all the medications they could find, and still no improvement.
No, and actually it was one thing that really laid heavy on me. It's what one doctor said that was part of that outpatient facility program, and he said to me, you know that you'll never be the same again, right? And that was something that I carry with me for at least the next 2.5 years, because I grieve my own self so much, and someone, I don't know, that's something that even if you think you should not say it to a patient. So slowly, I was becoming more severe, and my therapist at the time slowly, she recommended, even she saw that it's not that much to work with me, and she recommended me to change the doctor and try new tests. And then from that point, she recommended some compound pharmacy type of medication, which slowly led me to no improvement, but through that it led me to a particular type of community and a support group that people from there guide me a little bit into other directions to find answers in my second year.
Right. So what happened? Tell us about that.
So in my second year, I start to I don't know, somehow be able to advocate a little bit more for myself. Like, not being from US, I didn't even knew the system, so that's why I kind of move along with how doctors recommend, because I thought that's what patients do. We just listen to what doctor says and we will be all better. So in my second year, when I finally was able to dig a little bit and advocate for me, I found an alternative medicine type of a clinic where it just seems that they work with me and they were believing me, which is sometimes all we need. It was very expensive, like things are, and they were willing just to look a little bit more outside the box for me, different type of testing, and month after month, test after test, it was like a puzzle. We got to some possible environmental type of a thing that might have caused something. So in the form of mold toxicity, which I want to just take and run with it. It's like we have an answer, which it was very weird because nobody else in my house was sick. It was nothing visible as mold. We did found it once we dig a little bit more. So for a while, I thought fixing that will fix everything.
Well, can you tell me a little bit more about it? I mean, I guess two questions I have is, first, how did they diagnose that? What was the evidence for this diagnosis? Or how did they come to this? And these are doctors, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, these doctors. So how did these doctors come up with this? And then the second thing is, where did you find the mold?
So the test that most alternative medicine practitioners use, it's a urine test for toxicity. Most of them are even using glutathione in a cream form or pills to provoke a little bit the toxin release. And then it's a particular lab that does this, and it's pretty new, so that's why it's still a little bit into acceptance by the mainstream doctors. So it's a mold test, and it brings it shows like 13 different types of mold and the levels. Of course, this is like, it's very hard to work with this, because if you look into the relationship with the environment, you can test yourself and then you can test the environment. But testing the environment is not very well regulated here in the US. So you get these results, but you don't have as much of a mainly approved range of what's normal. So my results show being very high levels of mold, and then for the next quite a while, I thought that's what I have to take care of. And I saw all these people that deal with this and suffer from this. The only problem in my case was that I was not reactive to anything. So it's almost like not having anything to work with, because that house was what made me sick, but moving, because we even moved because of it. No environment made a change into my symptoms. The house where we were living at the time, we did eventually found the mold. It was under the tub in our case, and it was in a bedroom wall, which was where the headboard was. And the headboard was not glued, but stick to the wall, so we never could have see it. But it was nothing visible, so it's very even hard to accept that such a small thing affect, and especially not seeing a change moving along. It was very hard to accept. But that became my new reality. This is it, and now we have a way out, which was not the case.
Right. So you see, now you've got evidence that you've got mold toxicity. Yeah. You're thinking, okay, I even found the mold, but nobody else in the house is sick, right?
No.
And then you move house.
Leave everything behind.
And it doesn't get any better.
It doesn't become any better. We left so much behind. And before we moved, we spent more money into testing. We left basically almost all furniture behind because that's porous and just fresh start. And my husband was actually so involved into this because he felt that now it's something that he is so manly for him to do, that he can fix. So he helps me in some way. So he was very, very supportive in this matter. So we moved in a matter of 2 months. And then on the other side, on treatment, usually with something like that, basically the treatment is heavily on the detox part. So stuff from dry brushing, infrared sauna. I bought one of those portable infrared saunas. I guess people can go into all sorts of juicing, and coffee enemas, anything. The problem is sometimes you do a little bit too much, even on some potentially good things, and I become very weak very fast, and it's all these binders that you take, and this type of binder supplements is something that you have to take so many hours before and after you eat from other supplements, so you become so consumed into all of this. So from all the treatments that I did, most of them didn't help in any way, but the detox ones, actually, some of them made me way worse. I went even farther into thinking this is the solution to my problems. I traveled 1,600 miles away, which is 2,400 kilometers, to a total, like another state here in USA, to a specific clinic that are dealing with, well, actually they advertise it as dealing with Lyme and mold toxicity, and they even have chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia on their website. So I accessed a treatment there that cost me over $20,000, which consists of 3 weeks of IVs of 6 hours a day, 5 days a week of different IVs.
And what's in those IVs?
Well, I did some vitamin C. It was glutathione for sure, and then some of them were a mix that I didn't. It was a certain protocol. I didn't look into all of them, and then it was some ozone therapy as well, which is when they remove the blood and then they mix it with oxygen and then they put it back on. That particular one was the only one that I felt just a tiny little bit of something. A little bit of something.
I mean, you must be so scared here. I mean, like, now you've got this mold toxicity, and I mean, the first doctor didn't help you. What did the doctor say after all the treatments for the first doctors when it didn't work? What did they say? Well,
the first clinic, I told them that I want to do this treatment, which is more intense, so I go out of state. And, they just let me go because they didn't offer such an intensive type of treatment here. And then after I did that treatment in another state, which it was very intense. I still work with that doctor for quite a while. And the thing that sometimes it's a little bit weird with mold toxicity is that some of the doctors, they want you to test your home with a particular type of a test, which gives a particular score. The test that is more reliable in this is like a dust test. Well, a lot of times when you don't improve as you should, they are like, well, you're not in the ideal environment. Of course, you do not get better because your house is not at the level of 2, which is something impossible in that scale. So it's like you never win in any way. So yeah, in my case, it was like, well, the house you live now, which is the new one, is still not ideal. But
it sounded like you really should have moved to the International Space Station.
I don't know. That was my only logic that I still had, because I was in all these communities and I saw all these people. I mean, there are people that move in the middle of Arizona, and somehow in certain, people react differently. But for me, not being reactive to this didn't make too much sense, because where do I move? I have to live somewhere.
I mean, you got rid of all your furniture. You moved and you spent all this money on treatments, and you lost all your books. I mean, how much money did you spend on all this?
Over $50,000 for sure. At this point, we already had to declare bankruptcy, which is just a different. It's just a different stressor for me. At this point, I had to quit my job completely because after I was on short-term disability for a while, I had to go back, and I tried again for like half a year, and then I just had to leave my job completely. One of the reasons was I had to leave anyhow, but me not trying to work it out into another type of medical leave was that for me to access all these treatments, I had to cash my retirement fund that I had. So all in with that, and the other thing that I had to do that treatment, we did a GoFundMe campaign for family and friends to help. So with that, my story became public, which is no shame into being sick, of course, but how do you explain all of this to someone? It's not something that a lot of people can relate with. So we did the best we could, and and everybody was so helpful. My family from Europe, but with your story being public, it comes a lot of explanation to do all the time, because everybody wants to check on you. And unfortunately, I did not have the answers that I wanted. Like, I wanted to get better for me, but even for all the people that support me in this.
And so, I mean, obviously some kind of alarm bells are going off, because you were saying, I heard you say it twice now, that it just didn't make sense because you weren't getting worse or triggered by the supposed mold, and all these treatments didn't work. So what's going on in your head then? I mean, are you thinking it is mold and you just can't get over it, or are you thinking it's maybe something else?
Yeah, so we're getting into September 2019, so almost 2 years into my illness, where I went to another family doctor as a second opinion, and that's when I officially got the diagnosis of chronic fatigue syndrome. Basically, it didn't take long. When he read my whole history and everything that happened the previous 2 years, is like nothing else to offer. He just put this diagnosis and sent me home with like 2 pages from WebMD where briefly describes CFS. So that's the first time that I heard about CFS, like, for me, like being in that category. And I asked him, what do I do with this? And he just said, I guess you can come back if it gets worse, or something like that. And that's when I slowly realized that me being in all this community and this mindset that this is the root cause and I have to work on this environmental aspect, I realized that actually what mattered the most for my recovery whenever I find my way is like the symptoms that I have. So like the fatigue was so crushing that I said, well, I am more into the chronic fatigue community. Like, I feel better there, even though this might have been what got me to these symptoms. So that's when I first somehow find out and accept that there is a component that it's in my hand per se. So a lot of people with sensitivities to mold or even chemical sensitivities, I start hearing people talking about brain retraining at this point, which maybe was not something that I would have paid attention the previous year or the year after. I was keep searching everywhere into someone finding a solution for me. So with mold, I heard some doctors, even some of the best in US, sometimes they did not took patient until they worked with a brain training program just to ease a little bit those sensitivities, because they couldn't really work with any type of treatment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so now you're making quite a shift there. You're identifying with the CFS. You're not being told about any treatments, but you do come across some idea of brain training for the mold toxicity. And I mean, tell me, what were your symptoms like when they were at the very worst? I mean, what was that like?
Yeah, so at my very worst, I was basically bedbound, let's say 20 to 22 hours a day. So I had weeks times when I was in bed. I had around 14, 15 months where I was housebound. When the pandemic hit, then everybody was isolated. It was no news to me being isolated. So the fatigue was so crushing that sometimes I felt it to my bone. I could not describe it to doctors. I could not describe it if it's fatigue or it's pain. Like, I feel like the fatigue was so deep that it almost was like pain. But I started having a lot of pain, which was not a problem from the beginning. The pain I cannot really describe. It was all over the body, and I think that got more intense even with all those detox protocols that I did. And then I developed some new symptoms like hot flashes, which hot flashes and fatigue, it's not a good combo. And a little bit of sensitivity to light and sound, but nothing, not too drastic. To heat, sound, and with my eyes, but nothing too drastic. And what was the hardest for me is that I could not see any type of patterns. Like, if I do this, it's better, or if I do this, it's better, or with a diet, people have such an incredible results just removing sugar or removing gluten, and it was hard to stick with anything where nothing seemed to shift in any way. So this is the time where I even watched some of your videos and other brain training, and I decided to go with a different brain training in 2019. And another disappointment on the book. I did my best to engage into that particular technique, and what I had to do, I just couldn't. I mean, I'm very determined, but I just could not stick with it.
Well, why do you think you couldn't stick with it?
Well, it relied heavily on visualization, which at my worst, it was very hard to find those resources in me. And you had to do it a lot. And but somehow I knew people get better. It was just not for me. So it was very disappointing. Until this point, I was just going from one thing to another, and I really got at this point that I just did not know. I did not know where to turn anymore. I mean, it felt so much loss and so fast that I didn't even have time to cope with it all, and feeling so sick all the time, and losing my body in some ways, because my body changed so much from all this medication that they put on me. So my body, my job, the finances, our house, and it felt like I lost my whole identity. At this point,
it's shocking experience, isn't it? And then where do you stand? I mean, you must be thinking, well, why didn't that brain training work?
Yeah, it's like, what did I do? Why did I do wrong on this one?
What did I do wrong? Yeah. So where to from there? I mean, at what point does one give up? I mean, what are you thinking is your future here? And what is your husband and family? I mean, what are they saying?
My husband was very stressed, and he in some ways I tried to protect him and not talk about all of this with him, because one of us had to provide. He had to go to work and provide for us. I had great support from my parents. They both, my dad lives with us, but then my mom came. This was the second time she came and basically took care of me. And it was so hard for them because they don't speak the language here and they don't understand the system and they don't know what's happened with me. It's not like I was even in the shape for them to take me to Europe and try to figure out there. Very, very difficult. And then another decision that I had to take at this point financially was already so hard, so I had to apply for disability, or at least try here in the US, which was another stressor that I had to deal with at this time. It was just survival. At this point, it was another integrative medicine involved, and we just jumped from using all these binders into forget those. Let's try this high dose antivirals.
So we're moving now from the mold toxicity to antiviral, like to different causal idea, right?
Yeah. So we try antiviral. After that, it was something to inhale. I forgot the name. That didn't do anything, and then from the antiviral we move into this anti-parasite, some sort of medicine. Nothing. And I remember.
Did we find any evidence of a viral infection or of a parasitic infection?
Yes, there were some. Yes, there were some viruses. I tell you the truth. I got so tired to keep up with all of this. So a lot of times I didn't look that much into the tests, but the inflammation markers were pretty high as well.
And what about parasites? What parasites?
I'm not aware of what it was, but I guess they have to have some sort of a justification and diagnosis code to try that. And I remember at this point that I got very low mentally as well, and this doctor, she was an integrative medicine doctor. She was had a specialty for mold as well, so she was good in her field. And she saw me that I was in such a bad shape mentally already, and she said, Alexandra, all I can prescribe to you is some chemicals. Meaning, what do you want from me as a doctor? All that I can give you, it's basically one type of form of pills. And at that time, it was very hard, because if I have half an hour with the doctor, let me just load all my problems to you. But later on, I could see that she had a point. Like, some other things had to change than me just going towards her for help. So this is the year of 2020 already. So towards the summer, I changed to another doctor, and this is a pretty well-known doctor here in the Midwest. So it was a last effort where I said, I have to trust him with what he does. And it was a shift in me where I have to stop researching. I got so tired. I cannot, like, for how much he's charging me, like, I cannot try to look into what he does. I said, that's it. So I think that somehow helped me mentally. So starting in June 2020, I started working with this doctor, and he a different approach. I mean,
so what was he treating? Was he treating mold toxicity? Was he treating parasites, viral, or was he treating CFS?
I don't even think this doctor believed in CFS. all the way, and or in even my approach in what I did. I had to take what he can offer, and that was not the whole picture. So by July of 2020, I counted. It was 42 different type of medication and drops and tincture. This is not 42 pills. It's not 42 pills. This is just 42 different kinds. It was quite
so more pills than that.
Yes.
Right. If you take it more than once a day or multiple pills.
Yeah. But somehow I was the type of person that I was so desperate to get better that I was not afraid to, like, treatment-wise at least, to just go into feeling way worse before maybe something will work. Like, even if a treatment made me worse, I still look at it as some sort of a shift, because if nothing changed, I feel it didn't give us anything to try to solve, like a puzzle.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's one more thing that didn't work.
Yeah.
At least that's something to cross off the list. So then, okay, any more doctors after that, or what happens next? When do things turn around? Because this is a harrowing journey, right?
Yes.
A harrowing journey.
It was a lot. I don't know, but somehow I just pushed through. And by September 2020, I finally somehow start accepting more about, this is chronic fatigue syndrome, and I start seeing recovery stories, and I just went all into it and just see that this possibility exists, that people do get better. And then somehow I remember from previous year that I looked into ANS REWIRE, and then I read more that, you made it specifically designed for CFS. So it was time to give it another try, with hesitation, but give another try to this type of approach. On top of what the doctor does, I said, he will do his thing, and I will just do mine.
So, but you tried a brain training approach. Do you think ANS REWIRE was a brain training as well? And so, if so, why try again? You know what I mean? What's your thinking?
Yes, I knew it's a brain training. I knew quite a few of them by now. In different communities, people, share, what they tried. And, I think that was the aspect that I saw, is like, this is specifically for CFS, like, and that's why I went with it, because sometimes if something is too general and I promise too many things for too many things, it might not work. So that's what it attracted me to go with it.
So then you go into the ANS REWIRE program, and I mean, was it what you expected? I mean, how does that compare to the brain training programs that you'd looked at? I mean, was it similar, or what was it very different, or what was the experience here? Yeah.
So, comparing with the other one, I could see right away that it was different in the way it was delivered. The one was that I did, it was they do some sort of seminars in person, so the program was very chopped. It was just different presentation that they did, and they just put it all together, and it didn't have like a very good flow, at least for my liking. And it was actually recommended that you do it in a matter of 4 days, because they do these webinar seminars in person, and that's the structure of that. So if you do it at home, they kind of want to somehow simulate the same, but it was like 15 hours of content in the previous program to do. I mean, it took me a week. I couldn't, but it was still too much. So that was such a difference with ANS REWIRE, where I just had a bite size, how I like to call it, of information. I went into the program willing to do anything. I mean, I don't know, people have different mindsets when they hit rock bottom, but I was willing to do anything. Like I was saying, if someone tells me to eat cardboard for a year, if it's any promise at the end, I might as do it. And yeah, I started working with it. Right away, I found a few other people that start their recovery with it. So I didn't have anybody that did it. So we kind of started together. So we created a support system outside of the main social media platform, which was very good. So I was just around the people that believe in recovery and they took a similar approach to it, and they were really committed to the process. So that felt very good, that I always had that accountability with others along the way.
So, but I mean, like you're talking about a program now, you felt overwhelmed by the first program, which was like 15 hours. And now we're looking at a program that
I did not know.
Bigger.
I did not know how big. I didn't know how many lessons there was either. So better not knowing it all.
So, but what was that experience like for you? I mean, was that overwhelming? Did you find that was stressful? I mean, how did you?
Yeah.
And also, like, it's not just about brain training, right? So, did you start to do a lot of other different things?
So, the thing that I resonate the most is I remember a little bit how I was before I got sick. So I was very organized. I was big on personal development, time management. These were my things. And I think that's why I felt so lost in illness, because I did not know how. I did not have a structure. I did not have a predictability in any shape or way. So that was the first thing that you gave me, new day, new lesson, let's go. And I started a little bit too strong, I have to say, like one lesson a day. So I finished the program in 5 weeks, which then I realized there is no rush into anything. And I started watching the lesson. I started working with the program, following the action plan. And, by this period in my illness, some of the things seem familiar. You heard them in quite a few places, but it's still a little bit of a process from just knowing them and start applying them and be very consistent with them. So that's what started to happen. And then I cannot lie, at one point it did become just a little bit overwhelming, but it didn't last long. At one point, the puzzle of my new habits and the new things that I tried to implement, it started to fall into place and me work with them.
Okay, so how did you deal with that when you started to feel a little bit overwhelmed? How did you deal with that?
Well, I realized that, like even healthy people, they wrote books about changing one habit, and we had to change so many at once. But a healthy person, if they're like, I don't want to go to the gym, I'm okay the way it is, their alternative is that they are still feeling good. I didn't have that to run to. So the illness in itself was hard the way it is. So it was just a different type of difficulty. So I might try it for now and see where it leads me. It was just not another option that it was in any way more comfortable. So I just went with it. I did had a little bit of the advice of someone that recovered with ANS, and it kind of prepared me, so to say, that, just be patient, just stay with it, just do your best, don't give up. So I was prepared for this to take a while.
And that's why we deliver it in the way that we do. We say, hey, you can do this in your own pace, right? You don't have to do everything perfect at every step. Maybe just try and do part of one aspect of, because it's a multi-lateral approach, not just brain training. It's so many different physical strategies, and sometimes maybe working with other practitioners. And it's like, well, if you can't do it now, maybe come back to it later. I mean, did you find that your recovery action plan built up like that? I mean, did you engage with any other healthcare professionals?
So for the first few months, it was just this functional medicine doctor that I see every 2 months, and just stay with that. I think 3 months after I start with ANS REWIRE, I start acupuncture. I did it, I think, weekly for 4 months. I did weekly, and then we start doing it bi-weekly. I was doing
Was it helping?
Well, I think to some degree it did. I did chiropractor as well. A lot of sessions, like over 60 sessions in a year. So chiropractor, acupuncture, functional medicine doctor, these were happening kind of the same time that I was doing the program. So I didn't want to rock the boat in any way. I didn't want to change much as I was doing the program. But in the same time, I did plenty of treatments before. So I saw that in itself didn't get me better. So I don't know exactly in what ways it helped, but if they did, it probably was not more than 20% of the whole end result, for sure.
Were you worried about doing the brain training? Because you tried to do brain training before and you found you couldn't do it. So were you thinking, I mean, how are you going to go with this other new brain training? I mean, is it going to be any different, right?
It's so interesting and kind of backwards. But when the first program didn't work for me, the idea of neuroplasticity and certain books and that stick with me. That stick with me. That it is part of recovery. I just did not find the way of how to apply this. So I believed in it, and by this time I was surrendering to, like, I have to take some sort of responsibility to get better, which are some words that I wouldn't accept to hear in the first year of being sick. Like, what do you mean? Is this my fault? Like, do I put this on my shoulder with everything else? So I was just in a different headspace that, oh, okay, like, I guess there are some things I can do along the way. So with the program, I remember when you were saying, talking even about sleep, that everything starts the moment you wake up. So it was become my first thing that I was able to implement is to get outside a little bit in the morning, and even a few steps, and that became my lifeline. It just became a new focus, that every day I do that, and that's checked, and it become my little success for the day.
What a different approach, isn't it? Amazing how these little things have an impact, because your whole mindset is critical when you're dealing with a crisis, right? Any crisis.
Yes.
If we feel completely overwhelmed and just focusing on the actual problem, how do we cope? How do we do anything? Did you was that an important part of the program, that mental coaching side of it?
It was so important. I did not even realize until later in the lessons how much the illness changed me from what I was before I've been sick. I forgot to say that in this time I was doing therapy as well. I found a new therapist that I worked with for a whole year, and one aspect that it was very ingrained in me. I had so many mental distortion. It was, me alone with my mind for too long of a time. Anybody, with their own mind in illness for too long, it takes you places for a little bit. So to sort all that out and change the mindset and really go for any type of little gain, it was such a shift. Like before the program, I think I was at the point where I could take a shower a day. So that became my one thing. Like every morning I could wake up, I see that towel. Today at one point I was able to do a shower, and that became the one thing. And then slowly it was the lesson that add up to that. And then slowly that became into those few steps, and
building from there. So how long was it until you had like a significant shift in your well-being with the program? And what in your mind did you put that down to at the time?
So my shift with the program was pretty slow. Like I could that's kind of how what I was hoping will happen. I said, if even a 5% a month I will take, even if it takes a year to get to 80% and another 6 months to 100, I will take it. And somehow that's exactly how it happened. So it was just 5% a month, if that. So small changes. I think at the beginning it was a little bit more mentally. It's like, oh my God, I cannot believe I have a way to do it. I have a support system. I have some sort of a plan. So I think for a while it created momentum just on that. And then slowly I start applying the rewire, and I start working with that, and that became the main key component into seeing changes, into seeing clearly changes. It took me a while. I was listening to all these videos of yours. I was like, wow, I really like it. Like, yeah, I agree. But you know how they say, knowledge is not everything. Applied knowledge is. So, and
you gotta do it. You gotta do it.
It's like something is missing, because I started the program the second time, and then because I had a support system, and the people were starting to rehearse how they do it, and we shared. And I was like, what am I doing? I'm not doing the most important thing. So the first two months, it was not even there, what I had to do the most, because I had to understand, my triggers. Like my illness, everybody thinks that, their journey is unique. But because I did not have these ups and downs, it took your program and your approach for me to understand where these triggers actually are, even though you feel flat all the time. So once I got a little bit of a hang into that, then things start to shift.
And then what are you thinking then?
Well, momentum starts to build, and evaluate every month, and as much as you can put it on paper, it become very uplifting. And then for a while, all these wonderful recovery stories, they were there for the bad days. That was the motivation that keep going. But after a while, I did not need them anymore, because I realized that I am working into building my own story.
That's so empowering, isn't it? Now you're not a leaf in the wind hoping something will be done to you to fix you, but you all are doing it.
Yeah.
Right? Like I didn't do it, right? You did it, right? That must be feeling pretty cool.
It felt quite amazing, and just getting outside into the world a little bit. And for a while, this is your whole universe, and even people you engage with is people that deal with the same thing because they understand you and they validate you. And just to go, I remember it was 3 months into the program, and I had a little bit of cabin fever in the house. It became, a little bit repetitive, and I told my husband, well, let's go for the weekend. And I remember going for a hotel. That was impossible before. It's like, first of all, it's like 3 bags of supplements, like it was a whole routine. And I remember going, and it just felt so good. I mean, not physically, mentally it felt good. Physically, I could still feel a little bit the effect of that. But by this time, I was not scared of the symptoms anymore. They were there, but I was not scared of them.
So let me ask you, how did that work with your friends? I mean, there's, 3 people together doing the program, is it?
Oh, we were like 6 of us.
Okay, now I would pretty much be able to guarantee that everyone's having a different experience at a different pace. All right?
Yeah.
And so you guys are talking about how you're doing things, what you're doing. Did you see people do better faster than you, slower than you? And how did this impact each other?
Yes. We were in different stages. Like 2 of the ladies, they were doing the program for the second time. Some started after me. So everybody was in their own recovery stage. And as I create the group, I made it very clear, like I said, take advantage of this group. Use this group in your advantage, meaning whatever you want to be accountable for or you want to do for the week, just talk here. And so we used that group a lot that way. Everybody was very, very encouraging for each other and truly, truly happy for each other. And was my second time to the lesson or something. We kind of start the lesson from the beginning together, and it was very wonderful. Of course, it's always a little bit difficult how you talk with others. They are not quite at the same stage in recovery, so it's always like that consideration and kindness.
So then I guess you keep recovering. It sounds like it's a pretty steady process. It's not like an overnight thing. It's not ups and downs. I mean, did you have big setbacks along the way, or was it kind of a straight line over 14 months?
Yes, it was a pretty straight line. Nothing, no crashes, more than like a day.
And so what are the health professionals saying around you? Like you had your integrative doctor, you had your psychotherapist, you had your acupuncture. I mean, all these people where perhaps they hadn't had seen the big results with you, and then suddenly you are seeing results. I mean, what are they saying?
Oh, I kept it to myself a lot. I feel like more people that I try to explain, sometimes people are set in their own ways, and I didn't really, I think I didn't want to talk too much about it until I am completely better, just so nobody cuts my wings, like sometimes you're so vulnerable, and I just didn't want to be in that place. My therapist was the only one that she was right there with me. Oh my goodness, I was like, look at this, let's look at this together, look at the symptom tracker. She was cheering me along the way.
Activity graph, yeah.
Yes, and who knows if she really understood or supported that, but she was good enough of a professional to just like, okay, and because she at one point she said, in regards with the pain, she worked a lot with chronic patients. She said, but you might have this for the rest of your life. No, that's not acceptable. So the only doctor that I saw this time is the functional medicine doctor, and well, I did told him a little bit into me engaging into doing certain things, but I could not see any receptiveness from him, and I don't want to talk too much because I was talking on my own money. It was somewhere around $100 every additional 10 minutes, so better keeping the stories to myself. Yes, it was very, very expensive, and it's maybe at one point this stuff would have hurt me, but I just kind of found my direction and went with it, because even the last time when I saw him, I told him, actually, I use this, neuroplasticity type of approach, part of my recovery, and he was telling me something about a supplement. So his idea of touching neuroplasticity was through a pill. I said, never mind.
Fair enough. So I mean, at what stage do you then start tapering off some of these different treatments? At what stage in your recovery did you say, this is not helping me anymore?
Yes, I did it very slowly. The doctor also, because he was going off what I was reporting, so he was, tapering down something as well. And I was able to go in vacation at 7 months into recovery. I was maybe around 70% at that time, and somehow I did not. I took my supplements with me, but that was not the stage where I stopped some of them or reducing some doses.
So with 42 supplements and medications, we may not go through all of them.
Oh, no. We will need another hour, I'm telling you. I know more than I ever wanted to know about them.
The program, obviously, besides brain training, it talks obviously about diet. It talks about treatments like acupuncturists, working with doctors, and so on. But it also talks about training the nervous system with physical activity. And I'm wondering, how important do you think that part of your recovery journey was?
It was so important. Those lessons, 31, I watched the most, because I really had to understand how to relationship with the movement. So I was an athlete when I was younger. I practiced track and field. I ran a full marathon 11 years ago. It was on my bucket list. I was working on my bucket list in my 20s. So my approach to exercise before I got sick, it was intense cardio. That was that I liked. So when I was not able to do that anymore in recovery, then I just might as well not know anything. So I was all or nothing. So as being sick, I tried to rest my way out of this illness, and it didn't really work out. And I had to understand that every little thing counts. I remember even you doing, even this counts. It's like when you talked about the connection with our lymphatic system, which affect, even the pain. So I started with any little movement, just moving my arms or something like that, and just build from that. But
what about the fear around this? It's kind of scary, because often it makes you feel worse when you do too much, right? And also, what about all the fear around the mold side of things? Was that still a big part of your concerns, that you might get exposed to mold, or that mold is not coming out of your body, or not being detoxed?
With the mold, I was not reactive more into one environment or the other. The doctor was already doing some sort of treatment in this direction, and I did not look more into it. I really didn't. With the movement and the exercise, I think it's a little bit of a particular situation, because I did not have extremely bad post-exertion malaise. In some ways, I feel it was not too much lower to go to the way it was, but I did not have that much. I mean, it was hard to do it, and of course I felt a little bit worse after, but they didn't create, that much of a fear. Then
I think that's the kind of the thing is when you're that low, you don't have those ups and downs. I think when people are functioning 50, 60%, they do something and suddenly go down to 30 and they're like, oh, it's post-exertional. But when you're like flatlining around the 10% mark,
yes, it's
how much lower can you go, right?
Sometimes we look at others. One of my support system, she had periods of time when for a few months she felt better, and through the years, and to me I was looking in, oh my God, how is it to have just a few days to like have a clear mind and just kind of get a little bit of a boost, I thought. But in the same time, she had her own challenges because it created a lot of doubt. Like whatever you try is like, well, what if this is just one of those periods? So for me, when it got better, I didn't doubt it as much that this doesn't last, if that makes sense.
One of the things that seems to really come through in how you use the ANS REWIRE program, some of the techniques, but in your whole journey, including how you approach physical activity, is the whole theme of, well, you can't do it sometimes. And if you don't feel up to it, you didn't do it. But you kind of did it a little bit. And you felt good about doing something a little bit. And it seems like a really powerful way of engaging and building positive habits. I mean, was this a conscious decision, or did this sort of come together from the program, or how did this evolve?
It was very conscious and very, very well thought of. I feel sometimes we're so subjective into everything with the illness, and we just don't have a clear picture of what is enough to do, or how it was when we were healthy. So for me, I measured in minutes, or I measured the steps that I did. I know it's not for everybody, but for me it worked very, very, very well.
But I get the sense that you measured, but you didn't necessarily stick to trying to reproduce it. See, that's what I find so interesting, because when you didn't feel well, all right, or you had symptoms worsening, then you did less, or if you didn't feel up for it. I know I really loved in all of your talking that you didn't beat yourself up or feel upset or disappointed. In fact, you just felt good. You said, oh, I can't go for a 10-minute walk today, but I can go for a 30-second walk.
Yes, because I wanted to find that little thing that I can celebrate. This was getting back my health. It became my full-time job. Like, I couldn't do much else, and nothing else makes sense until I had it. So I was very focused on these small gains. I remember when I was not well until after 4 or 5 p.m. sometimes, in the beginning, and then I was like, it's okay, I need 55 minutes in bed and 5 minutes I am out. And then maybe my goal was 10 minutes, but I come back, I stay 55 minutes and then go back again. So something shifted there into how I was thinking about this, because I could have been like, I cannot believe I cannot do this, and now I'm back in bed into like, now I have to do this, and then I do a little bit of that.
Yeah, progress, not perfection. Look, you said you had this period of some anxiety, I guess, leading up to your illness. I'm wondering, in the program we talk about the life balance wheel. We talk about personality aspects of our, aspects of our personality and cognitive distortions, how we engage with life and the world. And I'm wondering, as you reflect now, why do you think you became ill in the first place? I mean, do you still think it was mold, or do you think it was something else? And that's the first part of the question. And the second part of the question is, how has this whole experience changed you now?
Well, I try to analyze a lot what happened, and I feel that some components of that answer I just don't know, and I might never know, and I have to be okay with that. I think the environmental exposure with the mold, I think it was probably just the last drop. That's why in some ways just attacking that problem didn't really make a shift. I had some anxiety through the years from becoming a parent and a working mom. So that might have led a little bit into this, and just having a job that it was not very fulfillment and not feeling appreciated there. I think that had to do with that as well, with some financial difficulty. I think it was just a little bit of some
discontent.
Issue. Yes. So I cannot pinpoint something bigger, and I had to at one point just let it go, because sometimes I feel we can get stuck into I cannot start until I have all of this figured out, and it's not the case. You just have to work with what you have,
and just get on with life sometimes.
Is this quote, I forgot who said it, but it's not your fault you got sick, but it's your responsibility to get better. So I try to go with that.
And I mean, how are you different now? How do you think you're different engaging in life now?
Well, you remember when I told you about that doctor that said you'll never be the same again, that. So I actually took 2-3 years, in the illness to get to this point to say, actually, he's right. I mean, this experience, trauma in some ways, just leaves a scar that you will never be the same. And that's okay. And it was some grieving about the old me. It's what was wrong with that? So, yeah, the doctor was right. I will never be the same. But I had to understand that different is not worse, So it changed me into looking at life, live life a little bit slower, especially here in US. It's just a different rhythm, and it's too much stimulation that we can have. Social media. I was out of social media for a whole year as I recovered. I did not even understood how much that was not helping until I was off for a few months. So I can see that I don't want to spread myself so thin in so many directions. I can look into my achiever pattern that I had before and really see, who am I trying to impress at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's a humbling experience, isn't it?
It's very, very, very humbling, and I always thought that I have, hopefully more than half a life in front of me. So from now on, I will know how to talk and how to listen to someone that is chronically ill, something that I didn't know before. And I think that's a big gain for sure.
What was the most amazing moment since your recovery that you just go, wow, I can't believe I'm doing it? Was it in the Dominican Republic?
Yes, it was me traveling there. It was like 9-10 months after I started the program, and I traveled for over 3 weeks, and it just seemed like, a healthy person will do, and dealing with traveling and with layovers and with the walking, and it just I forgot how much beauty is into the world. For a while, I felt so disconnected. You look at people laughing and talking, and you come from such a dark place that you feel it's like, I cannot believe that these people never knew like how it was, and where we come from. It was amazing. I love to travel, so for me to be able to go, and I did some traveling after, even in the 11 month after I did a program, or 12, I was saying I'm 97, I'm 98, because I still needed to do something big and travel to really see that I come back and everything is okay, and I go business as usual.
Good for you. Good for you. If you could give someone advice, someone who's currently got CFS, I mean, what would it be? What do you think you would say to them?
I would say that they have to believe that they will find their way back to full health, and they have to believe it, and they have to advocate for themselves, and that people find their way to recovery in different ways. And I think we have to respect and celebrate whoever gets to full recovery. Each one of us are slightly different, and I feel that if something helped me and I share with someone else, it's really, you're not losing anything to like look into it. Like we don't have guarantees into anything, but you might just find your way through someone inspiring you and hoping you can get that. It's so important, and at my worst, I promise myself that I will get there and give hope to others and help in any way, the way you do it too.
Well, you've done that today, Alexandra, and I thank you very much for doing that and bringing your story of success and hope to the next generation of recoverers.
It's absolutely my pleasure, Dan. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the podcast. We hope you felt supported by it. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us via cfsunravel.com, and make sure that you subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or wherever you listen to it. And you can leave a comment and a 4 or 5-star review if you feel so inclined. If you want to make sure you get your free copy of Discover Hope and get notified about all new recovery resources and interviews, including recovery interviews, subscribe to us via the website. Check out some of our other podcasts. I hope you'll join us again soon.